I think it was in that same week that I started with the mutual aid. I went out there and it's scary. It was one of those people were just getting maced. I show up and people were just literally like being maced and being taken into custody because ICE would have this idea that I don't know if they thought that would control the crowd or whatever. But it feels like it's like a movie, honestly, where they would line up, and I think you see it in other videos. They out of nowhere they would just come out and just run like mace the crowd. So that's how I actually started with Haven. So then I'm out there taking some aids to people that were out there being maced and being in protesting, and then Haven's parked, and then I met amazing Natalie. And I met her and she's in her car and we're talking and I'm like, well, I can stay around, and wait and see what happens. Well, that wait turned into 2 people being released, and it's negative outside and some people don't speak any English. So they're like, hey, can you help us? And I'm like, sure. I translate. It was actually really scary because I'm one of the younger guys. I think there was a video that went viral. He was actually like pulled out of the kitchen in Chipotle. And he was sharing with me like how he was terrified. And I was like, I promise you that I'm gonna make sure you get home safe. Like, no, nothing's gonna happen. I will get you home safe. And then the other gentleman, when I give him a ride, we're talking, and it's a grown man breaking down, grown man crying, and in fear of these people because they're being beaten. They're not being treated like humans, and it's like unbelievable stuff happening to these people. I didn't know what to say to him. I just kept apologizing, and I was like, I apologize for what our government's doing to you guys because it's insane. It's inhumane. And, I get him home. I had a couple bags of groceries in the back for them to, something to get him by because he had family. He had a wife and kids at home waiting for him. So when we get to his house, the first thing he's embraced with is with his son. And I have a son. The son says, Papi, and just runs to his dad and hugs him. And that there broke my heart because the trauma they're causing these innocent kids.
Hi, and welcome to a special in-person episode of Occupation Breakdown. I'm here today with my good friend Mari. I actually met Mari after the unfortunate, awful murder of Renee Good. After I think it was basically that Friday afterwards, we had met at a hotel sound protest in Woodbury. Actually, that night, uh, kind of connected, and then after that, just kind of kept, crossing paths along the way, and I've always been keeping in touch. Mari has actually taken a very interesting journey. Basically, since then, has quit her job, essentially started a food pantry out of her garage there. Eventually, started working with Haven Watch as a volunteer. Eventually, becoming an employee, and has just been through an amazing journey along the way. So I want to start with this video here, and then we'll just kind of talk about it.
What the assholes at Fox News don't like to show is that these so-called agitators, these so-called radical leftist terrorists are actually people that are helping their communities. They're bringing food to the communities. They're standing against this repression. They're standing against Donald Trump's evil, his racism, and they're bringing power to the people through community-based actions. The future of this country does not lie with the Democrats. The future of this country lies with you, the people. You, the ones who are doing the work to stand up for humanity. Do not ever forget that.
All right, Mari.
Yeah.
So do you want to just kind of walk us through how you got from that sound protest that night all the way to just kind of where we are today?
Yeah, I think that so for me, I want to start with it became a little personal when ice raids started happening. It was a Monday after Renee Good was murdered. And then I think that Monday I go into work in Woodbury, and there's a couple minutes before I go into work, there's a person from our community that's badly treated with ice.
Resident, lifelong resident of Minnesota, current resident of Woodbury, Minnesota. I'll be very brief in terms of my interaction with ICE. On January the 12th, I'd finished taking my 7th grader to school, was stopping by the local grocery store when I saw an ICE vehicle essentially patrolling through the lanes in the parking lot. This was the first circumstance where I saw an ICE vehicle sort of in the flesh in my community after hearing for a number of days that they were present in my community and actively pursuing actions against people that they felt were there illegally. At that point, I felt a strong sense of responsibility as a citizen, as a member of my community, to hold the individuals who are instilling fear and anxiety in our communities accountable for their actions. So while trying to keep myself as safe as possible, stayed in my vehicle and grabbed my cell phone and started recording them from a good safe distance. At approximately 90 seconds to 2 minutes later, they parked in an adjacent parking lot. I parked near them, and one of the ICE agents got out of their vehicle, came up to my window, took a photograph of me, and then immediately got back into their vehicle. At which point I continued to follow them, recording all the while, as they then went up the street approximately a mile away and turned into my neighborhood, onto my street, and into my cul-de-sac. They essentially led me to my home in a clear effort to show me that they know who I am, they know where I live, and that I should not continue to hold them accountable. I continued to do so, continued to follow them, at which point, after following them for a total of about 8 minutes, I was then boxed in by 2 different ICE vehicles. I was forcibly removed from my vehicle. One of the ICE agents opened the car door. Another one crawled into the back seat and put his arm around my neck, used his other hand to remove my seatbelt, at which point 4 other ICE agents removed me from my vehicle, put me to the ground, put me in handcuffs, and put me to an unmarked white van, and then led me to the Whipple Federal Building. I say all of that to say this. The room that I was in for the 10 hours that I was in the Whipple Federal Building with leg irons on my legs, the room that I was in was then filled throughout the day with a total of 8 U.S. citizens, all of whom were utilizing their constitutionally protected rights to record the activities of ICE agents. At no point in time was I impeding their investigation. At no point in time was I causing alarm or awareness to their presence. I wasn't honking my horn or flashing my lights. I was simply recording them from inside my vehicle. This kind of precedent is a dangerous one, and I would encourage the members of the committee to strongly encourage what this bill does, which is simply provide citizens a mechanism by which they can protect and hold those accountable for violation of their rights. What I did was done under the guise of accountability, and I still believe that holding the individuals accountable for their actions is what I did and what I will continue to do.
Thank you for your testimony today.
And I go in and I'm like, hey, what's protocol, right? And I'm told that, these ruthless people are allowed in our, we're allowed to serve them. We're supposed to serve them. We can refuse service, but they're allowed in anything is public area. So then I sat there and I thought about it. I think I did like a haircut or 2 before I chose to be like, hey, I stand for, for the people. I said, I go in, I'm like, it's a hard decision, but I don't feel safe. So I decided, I stepped down. I told them, I'm like, you know what? I quit due to my safety. And so that was that Monday morning. That Monday night, my husband is getting off work. He works out by the new warehouses out where they were talking about doing one of the detention centers that people were, against here in Woodbury. And, we're like, I'm at my sister's and I get a message from my husband saying, ICE is following me. ICE is right here at my job. And I go into like, full panic mode. And I'm like, okay, what are we gonna do? Like, are you okay? He's like, no, they just literally stopped my coworker, his his partner, and he's like, they yanked him out of the car, broke his windows, and I'm like, I'm on my way. I don't know, it's scary at that moment because my husband's in the situation as well. And so we're in the parking lot. We're telling like there's an ICE vehicle parked outside and we're honking and letting them know like get out of the area, like you're not welcome in the area. And in that moment, we're following them to get out, And so when we're following them, it's like the ICE agent finally decides to like check me and he like gets out of his car and I'm not like I have a video or a picture of it I can and he's like telling me like if you don't back the up, I'm gonna shoot you. You don't learn. And I'm like, I was just so shocked from his response.
Thank you. Thank you.
These are people that are supposed to be, doing the right thing and they're violating our laws, violating our rights. So it was terrifying. It became a very personal issue for me. And then they decided to harass us for a little bit. But then I decided to be like, I can't be afraid of them. I'm not doing anything wrong. Like, I'm going to do what I have to do. So then I see a friend post that somebody needed some formula or some milk for kids and they were afraid to leave their home because of the whole raids. And she's like, I'm like, hey, I'm open. I was like, I'm open, I'm available. And so I first started with one grocery shop out of my own funds. I was like, okay, yeah, let's go help this family that's struggling. So we went and did the grocery run for my friend. Well, then a couple like hours later, she reposted something and she's like, we need a Pediasure for this kid that has autism and the mom's afraid to leave the home. And I'm like, okay, let me see what I can do. So I sent one message to the amazing community that we have out here. And I say, hey, does anybody know or can we get some Pediasure? There's a family with a kid with special needs, all liquid diet, needs Pediasure. So off of one message, I became the mutual aid. Honestly, it was crazy how the amount of support we received. It was like one of those things that I couldn't believe it. Like it was very shocking to receive so much support from the community. And it was like, all right, we were delivering nonstop groceries. I mean, there was days where I was getting out about 30 meals, for families. So it was one of those things where I literally stepped in and didn't even think twice. We were like all different bases. And then from when, things happened and we ended up somehow in my garage. And my garage literally was a food shelf for a while. And it was like a blessing because we would get families and, we're like, nobody should go without. People were afraid to go to like these food shelves and they were afraid to do anything, like to even leave their house for anything. So it was a terrifying moment. I think that when you know, s- I would ask for requests, the community would be so amazing to help come up with them. So we literally did it through no funds. We did it basically off of like community donations, people coming through and supporting, and just an amazing community of women that I would say are soccer moms that literally came together. I mean, I am amazed at how many of us stepped in and did all that for these families. It's really sad. It's really hard that what we're living is even crazier. I think that it affected me very personally, and I think that when I just, I was like, I have to do what I have to do. I have to make sure that people continue. And I think it's just amazing to be able to support those families that are afraid. These kids are innocent kids. They don't deserve to go without. I don't think anybody should go without just because of everything that we're going through with ICE. They're not friendly. They weren't friendly at all. I mean, my experience with them was not friendly. So I don't really think that saying they are friendly, they have not been friendly, not at all. And when people sit here and say, "Oh, they're friendly and they are not friendly people. They actually like will terrorize you, threaten you, and make you feel scared." I think that it's one of those things where you're just like, either you sit back and be afraid, or you speak up and you decide to stand up for the people that can't use their voices, that are afraid.
Yeah. Just some early questions there. As far as the early part of that situation, I know there's a lot of talk between whether people should be using established nonprofits, the food shelves, things like that, or whether it was, ethical for someone to be doing what you were and many other people were doing. So it's not like just a you thing, but people all across the state were doing stuff out of the garage or underground, so to say. What do you think it was like for people, that would have just had to rely on the food shelves, like, if that wasn't there?
You know, I would say it's hard just for, it was my personal space as well. So it is hard. It is something that you have to look into and, I didn't think about it. I just was like, sure, let's do it. And I think that nobody was prepared for this. And there's no other way than to say we were prepared or anything because it hit me from one day to another. And from one day to another, I was just like, go, 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 go. I mean, there was times where I felt like I was done because I was doing it off of my own funds, off of my own when a lot of donations wouldn't come in, I was doing it. And then there's amazing people like in the video that you showed that show up and save me.
Today I'm teaming back up with DeWoke Farmer for another day of community aid supply runs. For today's runs, we are helping supply a community aid effort that is being run completely out of someone's garage. We rounded everything we could up from Costco, but with the need being so great, we still had a lot to get. So once we had everything loaded up, we headed over to Buy More Mercado. They had lots of good stuff that the community desperately needs. They were so sweet and incredibly grateful for us choosing them to help the community. Once we were checked out there, we headed over to meet Mari.
This is my little food shelf. I'm here helping out the community. People are afraid to leave their homes. People are saying ICE has slowed down, but honestly, I just think they're changing what they're doing. I feel like there should be nobody should go without food. I do have a small GoFundMe. I'm not asking for much. Anything, even just to share, makes a big difference. If you guys are looking to donate anything to us, you guys are welcome to reach out to me directly.
Like my friend, my friend that supported us, it started off of one like, hey, I have some chicken, and then from there donated chicken, and then it goes from donating chicken to like, here you go, continue supporting, continue doing it, don't give up. And it's really like, I think it goes to where the community joined forces, and that support was amazing. So I don't think nobody's ever prepared for it, honestly. So I think just, do what you can, even if it's just a little drop.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think when people think of like, the food pantries, all these things, in a normal instance, maybe they would be able to handle people in need. But because of the large influx, there was no nonprofit established or anything that could have taken the brunt of what was happening at that time.
No, I think that people were afraid. I would make a good example is like, to go to a food pantry, they do request certain information from you, right? People were afraid. I mean, ICE was parked outside these food pantries. So where these are actually established food pantries that are meant to serve the community, to serve people, and people couldn't even use those. So I would say, it was one of those things where even the ones that were meant to serve our community were struggling. And I think that when we all stepped in, I think we helped each other out because even these food pantries were willing to support these small, like myself, mutual aid garage and help us put in some help to continue to be able to serve these communities.
Hmm. And and this is, no shade or anything to the food pantries. They're obviously doing great work. They have limits, they have budgets, they have things like that that they're working with. So they're trying to ration their food out and do the best they can to spread it. So I know we were talking at one point, we were looking at like, the small amount of things that people were like expected to live off of. I know when you were doing it, you went beyond groceries and things like that because I think people kind of forget that you not being able to leave your house completely is not just groceries. It's not just basic things. What were some of the type of like extra ordinary things and requests that you kind of came across?
Some of these people were actually asking for the bare minimum, which was like, okay, like very bare minimum. But some of the extra stuff that we were asking for was like hygiene products, pet food, or even diapers and wipes for kids. We were literally trying to make them as comfortable as we could. We were actually also at some point giving out games, family games, and we had big donations from games that somebody was able to give us, and we were giving games to kids and trying to create like little kits for kids to be able to keep them busy. It is scary. It was where I think, some of the basic stuff, but on top of like laundry stuff, dish soap, trash bags, toilet paper, it was one of those things where, people think, oh, it's only food, and these food pantries, which is a good example,
Mhm.
would provide some of these things, but it was random. Sometimes they wouldn't even be able to provide some of these things. So when we had people asking, like, do you have just the basic hygiene products was a big thing that we were requesting for families. Even Tylenol, medicine was something that people were like, were afraid to go to the pharmacy to get medicine and they had sick kids, or it was cold season and people were afraid. And so we were requesting medicine as well at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I think one of the things that stood out to me is obviously, you know, that I know you're a mom as well. And we talked about it like the moms of the community really coming together to make this happen. I think, anybody who's taking care of another living being, let alone a human being or anything like that, and when you're solely responsible for them and you know the ramifications of what's happening when those things aren't showing up and that food isn't there, those, the formula, diaper, stuff like that. uh, it definitely, I think it's like the mothers that really understand that and empathize with that more. So definitely grateful, to have met you, but also to just have you in our community, obviously, because it's,
And it's amazing. I think I'm very thankful that I've met amazing people. I mean, I've met very, very amazing women and amazing, an amazing community. Just not women, I've met amazing men too, that were like,
yeah,
out there trying to help and do whatever they could. And I think that that's where I'm very thankful was without the community, I don't think I was going to be able to continue to do what I was doing, honestly. There was a point where I was doing literally everything and I was like, go, 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 and I would not stop. But then it's like, I'm okay, mine are okay, and I know my kids are gonna be okay. But what about those kids that are in fear? What about those kids that are not okay?
yeah, yeah. It's just an incredible toll that's being put on our communities and stuff, and I just it's unimaginable. So basically, I know at some point there, I know we were talking. I believe it was around the time when there was some reports of people being released from custody and dropped into parks and stuff like that with some like, head lacerations and stuff like that. There's some concern there. It was right around the time when I think Haven was kind of forming. How did you end up getting involved with that work?
It's crazy how I ended up with Haven, actually. I seen a friend post, the same friend that's actually continued to do the mutual aid stuff, and I actually just, grew from her. But that same friend had posted that we needed some support out at Whipple. I think it was honestly like in that same week that I started with the mutual aid. It was pretty like in the beginning. And so I see that she writes, "Hey, can anybody help a friend?" And I'm like, "Sure, I'll go out there." And I went out there and it's scary. It was one of those people were just getting maced. I show up and people were just literally like being maced and being taken into custody because ICE would have this idea that I don't know if they thought that would control the crowd or whatever, but it feels like it's like a movie, honestly. they would line up, and I think you see it in other videos. They out of nowhere they would just come out and just run, like mace the crowd, and they're peaceful. Honestly, a lot of people say no, but a lot of the protesters are peaceful and have been peaceful. And so, especially here in Minnesota, I can speak for Minnesota, but it was like one of those things where like I don't know if they thought it was okay, like just out of nowhere, just come up to the crowd and just mace, which was one of those things that you're just like you see in a movie, people are just, whoa, like this is really happening. So that's how I actually started with Haven. So then I'm out there taking I think I was taking some aids to people that were out there being maced and being in protesting. And then Haven's parked. And I'm like, hey, I was sent by my friend. She was in communication with you guys. And then I met amazing Natalie. And I met her and she's in her car and we're talking. And I'm like, well, I can stay around, and wait and see what happens. Well, that wait turned into two people being released. And it, it's -0 outside and people are being released. So they're released and some people don't speak any English. So, it was amazing that I was there and I'm like, hey, I'm called in and they're like, hey, can you help us? And I'm like, sure. I translate. And that night was the night that I started with Haven. Was actually, I was I was offered to, help, and I offered to help actually. And then I just stayed there and two people were released. It was actually really scary because I'm one of the younger guys. I think there was a video that went viral. He was actually like pulled out of the kitchen in Chipotle. And it was very scary, like very, very scary. And he's sharing with me like how he was terrified. And I was like, I promise you that I'm going to make sure you get home safe. Like, no, nothing's going to happen. I will get you home safe. And then the other gentleman that I also gave a ride that night, he was detained for a while. And when I give him a ride, we're talking and it's a grown man breaking down, grown man crying and, in fear of these people because they're being beaten. They're not being treated like humans. And it's like unbelievable stuff happening to these people. So this other gentleman, once I drop off the kid, the younger gentleman, he didn't really share much, but the older gals, shares with me and he's like, it's horrible in there. He said, it's scary. There's a lot of us in a cell. He's like, it's cold. And I literally was like, I was speechless, honestly. I couldn't say I didn't know what to say to him. I just kept apologizing. And I was like, I apologize for what our government's doing to you guys because it's insane. It's inhumane. And, I get him home. I had a couple bags of groceries in the back for them to, something to get him by because he had family. He had a wife and kids at home waiting for him. So when we get to his house, I drop him off. And the first thing he's embraced with is with his son. And I have a son, so I know what it is. And the first thing, the son says, Papi, and just runs to his dad and hugs him. And that there broke my heart because the trauma they're causing these innocent kids. These are not criminals. This guy was working. He got picked up from his job site. So it's like the kid that just ran to his dad and hugged him and said, Papi, was was something that made me think like, wow, how many more families, how much more pain does these kids have to endure? And it continues, honestly. I mean, it's an ongoing thing. Children are being left without their parents every single day. And it's sad. It's very sad. When I literally dropped off the dad and made sure he was inside and made sure that nothing was wrong and asked him if he needed anything else from me, I literally had to go to my car and I cried. I cried because it's hard. It's hard to see these kids. They need their parents. They need their mother's love. They need their father's love. Sometimes some of these women, their main support system is the father, and they are stay-home moms. So it is very hard to see, the kids suffering. For me, is what gets me, and I continue to stay with Haven. And I would translate 24/7 for them. And then I would also help with other stuff with them. But it was the majority of my time was volunteering with them as translation. I mean, it would be any time of the day. It would be sometimes at 2, 3 in the morning because that's the time people were being released, which doesn't make sense why people are being released to me at that time at night out in the cold. So I would be like, hey, can you translate for us quick? And I would be like, sure. I wouldn't even think about it. I would literally set everything to the side and help translate. And so that's literally how I continue to stay with them.
Yeah. And that's just obviously incredible work. And, I'm very grateful, obviously, that you have the, language skills and everything to be able to do that, reading and writing as well, right? So it's not like are just able to just speak. You could, provide other support as well. As far as some of the things that you've heard, obviously you talked about a few of the conditions inside. Are there any like stories in particular that just kind of like stopped you in your tracks?
There is stories. I mean, I could say there's a couple, but I would say that when there's a mother. It's a basic, really quick. There was a mother, and she was detained with her daughter. And she was, they asked me, can you translate? And I was like, yeah, I can translate. It was one of those things like, I don't care. And when the mother is crying and just saying, like, I just begged for my kid to be okay, for my daughter to be okay. It was one of those moments where I stopped and thought about it. Like, that could be me. That could be my child, you know, begging for mercy for them to be safe, begging, like, please don't do anything to my daughter. Please, like, make sure she's okay. Like, that is one of the scariest things. That's one of the stories that stopped me. I think that one, and I say a couple other ones, my 12-year-old, I call her my 12-year-old. That story was one of my hard ones as well, where they become very personal. Some of these stories become more of a personal, which is really hard. I think I give out shout outs to anybody that does social work with kids, honestly,
Yeah.
because it is hard.
Yeah.
I give props to those workers.
Yeah.
Um,
You are one. So yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I tried my best,
Yeah.
and I will continue to do my best as much as I can. But this one broke my heart as well, and it was very hard. Mom's detained, and child, is left behind with dad, but they're terrified, and mom wants her kid. We as parents want what's our kid safe. So it became where we were having to make sure she got home safe with her mom, and mom was going to get deported, and the kid was left behind. But it's so hard when you have a kid and you know how it is, and this kid is like, I want my mom, or I want to be with my mom, and they're used to being with mom 24/7. So it is where, just I made sure that she was okay. I made sure that we could make sure she got to where she was going with mom. And we finally did. I think it was like a month later, but she made it with mom, and it was one of the best feelings that I could have. Is like reuniting them with their loved ones, or with their families, is something that I think helps a lot. But I think that just the people that were being released is out with no phones, no IDs, it is real. It's happening. I mean, there was people that were hurt and were being released hurt, and it's like, why are they being released in this condition? And then not only in the condition, but some of them needed medical care, and they were so afraid. So some of these people would say, no, I don't want to get the medical attention because we're afraid. And having to like go with them, or having to, like, make sure that they go to the doctor and get checked out, and providing that safety for them is what we could do. So that's literally what made me be like, I'm going to continue, and I'm going to keep fighting for these families and these kids.
The Trump administration just actually put in they removed the requirement for ICE facilities to report on people that die within 30 days of leaving an ICE detention facility. So kind of what you were just talking about there. What does that make you feel like, given the fact that you've seen people come out in those conditions? In Buffalo, New York, you had the gentleman who was, I think, blind, or, maybe partially blind. It had some other health conditions. They let him out at a gas station. They found him dead in the snow. you know? So what does that kind of make you feel like with that 30-day notice being removed?
That makes me angry, honestly. It makes me frustrated, angry, because you didn't pick them up that way. You They were okay when you did not pick them up from a gas station. So it makes me, or wherever they picked them up, half these people are probably picked up at work sites. And it makes me very upset and frustrated that they are changing that policy. Because how many more besides, like, how many more? We need justice for the two already that were murdered here in Minnesota, which has been terrifying. How many more people have to die under this administration, under this injustice system? How many more is my question.
Yeah, yeah. So as far as I think, you know, what most comment sections and all these people are saying, and what they probably just assume that what you and Haven and stuff are doing is like what you're like out here just helping illegals or something like that. And when I think about it, if you are brought into Whipple and then you're released, obviously they fucked up. They made a mistake. You're here, whether it's, you know, even just a resident permission to be a resident or whatever the hell,
Some type of
legal,
status.
yeah, some type of status. So the entire Haven, watch support system is for people that are, in some theory, citizens, and some, theory, just people that are here in some way legally. Have you had any people that were citizens in circumstances that, and strictly citizens, but I'm curious all across the board, but, was there a large amount of like actual U.S. citizens that were in the mix?
I personally have not run into any that
Okay.
were in the mix. I have run into a lot of them having status already,
Okay.
or working towards some type of status that the team had work permits, or are doing it the right way.
Mhm.
But my thing is with the situation is they don't care. And I will say they don't care. And a good example is my personal situation that happened is they did not care for my husband's coworker. He literally told them, and they still took him. He said, "Here's my documents." They said, "We don't care." And he flinged the documents, and he said, "We don't care. You're not a citizen," is what he said. But
Yeah.
he's legal because obviously he had a work permit. He has a status to do something here.
Yeah, yeah. No, and obviously I find this objectionable across the board. I was just curious if you had any, runs in your case. And obviously just the fact that people are here legally, and then to have that happen. I know you kind of had a lot of work, and we'll kind of talk about that other situation later. But as far as people that were in the self-deportation process, and you kind of just mentioned it about people who are here legally, they have done the right steps, they've done all the right things, but now it becomes what, in my estimation, just so fucking terrifying.
Fear. They are in fear, and then they choose to leave.
Yeah.
It's a fear where there's people that have been here all their lives, and they run that fear. They run the fear of, what if they take us and my kids are left behind? Because that's what they're doing. They are separating parents from their kids. They are doing this stuff. So even people that have some type of status and have been here all their lives are choosing to get up and go because of the fear of the terrorist that's going around. So it is scary to think about all these people, the self-deportations. A lot of these people have been working. Some, I can tell you that from all the cases, these families have been working. They are paying tax money. They are giving something back to our government. And it's tax money that probably they don't see again. So even if they are doing whatever, but they're working and they're not just living off of our government.
Yeah. So I know at some point here, like I had mentioned earlier, not only can you speak Spanish, but you could also, you could write as well and read. So you at some point started also doing court support, right? And you've been within Whipple and actually, well, maybe not court, just at least like being there with people, right?
I have, yes.
What's that experience like?
Oh my, it's horrible. Okay, it is. To me, it becomes personal just because when I go in there and they look at you crazy, but then, you go in there and you're supporting a family or supporting anybody. They'll ask you like who you are, or what are you doing? And then they'll look at you and tell you like, oh no, you can't do it, or no, you're not allowed to do that, right? And then, for instance, it's actually happened to me. It made me very upset. Was I was in there to support somebody, and I was not let into the court to support the person. And then there's another volunteer from our Haven Watch, and he goes because they didn't let me in. They told me I wasn't able to support. So then he goes in, and he was actually let into the court. And I'm like, this is crazy. This is unbelievable. I just couldn't, I was shocked just because I'm like, the amount of discrimination that we're receiving, it's unbelievable. I couldn't even go in there to support somebody. And then the person that we were escorting was afraid. So they were like, can you support me? Can you stay there with me? And I promised the person, I said, yeah, I'll stay here or I'll be outside. And one of the other volunteers was able to go in. And the crazy part is he was actually even asked questions by the judge, like, who are you and why are you here? And like, it was just mind blowing to me that I was turned away to be able to support that same exact client. So for me, it was like, okay, or you'll go in and you'll ask questions and you'll try to translate and they will give you a hard time. For me, it was that experience. I literally had to ask, like, hire person in Haven and be like, hey, they're not letting me. Can we have an attorney or somebody? They're telling me they're not going to give me any information, but they've done it before. They've given information to somebody else. And it's one of those moments where I go in and they look at me as a joke because I'm there to support or to ask for something. And so I was like, yeah, I'll be back. And it became one of those things where I was like, you'll see me here every day if I have to be here. I will come and support these people no matter what. As long as you keep turning me away, I'll still come in and continue to support. It's sad. It's sad because they don't know if I'm legal or not.
Yeah.
They didn't, don't discriminate people. Discrimination has gotten really crazy with these ICE agents and these federal government system where you look a certain type and then, I think that it used to be around all the time, but you didn't see it as much. You see it now, right?
Yeah. So the person that was let in, did they speak Spanish?
No.
I almost wonder if they see you as more of a threat because of the fact that you are actually able to enlighten these people to what's going on. Well, this white person is just really just a body. Like they don't know shit of what's going on. Well, I guess it depends, Well, if they can't help the person like figure out what's going on, accurately.
It is crazy to me. It is crazy to me that they didn't let me in, and then like literally 5 minutes later, we sent a different volunteer, and he was a white guy.
Yeah.
And they let him in, and I'm like, that is insane. I was like, I literally went in with the same client, and they turned me away, and then I sent a different volunteer. And then, but they were really sweet with him. I mean, really nice, did not give him a hard time, nothing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and I think, also he's probably just useless for it as well. It just sucks. So as we mentioned earlier, you got being involved in the self-deportation process for a lot of the families involved here. I know at some point this became very intensely personal for you. So I'm going to play a video here in Spanish, and then we will talk about this.
Trump está destruyendo a los latinos, separando familias, persiguiéndonos por el color de piel, por el idioma que hablamos y por dónde venimos. Pero este chistosito cree que puede cuestionar lo que yo hago en un fin de semana de Pascuas. Para que sepas que yo hice un domingo de Pascua, estaba trabajando, preguntándole a una mamá qué se siente que su hija tenga que autodeportarse a pesar de que tiene DACA.
Me siento muy triste. Siento que se me va la mitad de mi corazón con ellos.
aguantándome las lágrimas mientras escuchaba cómo una mamá pierde a una de sus hijas. Tuve que ver cómo una mamá y un papá que tienen una congregación que son literalmente el ejemplo en la comunidad, esta familia conservadora que dice Donald Trump que él quiere en este país, tuvo que despedirse de su congregación, de sus amigos, de sus familiares. Tuvo que despedirse de su vida porque ella llegó a este país cuando era una bebita y hoy tiene que regresarse a México por miedo. Y yo estoy documentando este caso. Es más, tengo tanto video de todo lo que he conocido de esta familia tan maravillosa que se va a un país que no conocen, que voy a convertirlo en un documental. Y eso es lo que yo estaba haciendo este fin de semana. Yo muy pocas veces en la vida, desde que estoy en las redes sociales, les he pedido algo. Pero hoy les voy a pedir que me acompañen a donarles para que ellos puedan restablecerse en México. Literalmente se estaban yendo cada uno con una mochila y ya una organización les ayudó para que puedan llevarse 10 maletas y es lo único que se llevan. Les voy a dejar el GoFundMe en los comentarios y en el enlace de mi perfil para que por favor me ayuden a donarles un poquito. Si cada uno dona alguito, vamos a poder ayudarlos a tener un poquito de dinero para que puedan restablecerse en México. Y etiqueten a esos creadores de contenidos que son grandes y que usualmente ayudan a la comunidad para que me ayuden a enviar este mensaje. Como ellos, hay muchísimas otras familias que hoy tienen que autodeportarse e irse a un lugar que no conocen porque Donald Trump así los están obligando. Hoy son ellos, pero mañana podríamos ser cualquiera de nosotros. Les dejo el enlace en los comentarios y en el enlace en mi perfil.
So, Mari, obviously, this hit really close to home with your family. Can you explain to us how this all came about? And take your time. I understand this is going to be a tough.
Yeah. So that's my cousin. So one day I don't really like we've lost communication throughout, we grew up, she got married and I grew up and I did my own thing but we were really, really close when we were younger. So one day I go in and I'm having a conversation with my mom and she tells me, "Hey, do you know that my cousin Marilyn is gonna they're planning to leave?" And I'm like, "Wait, what?" Like I didn't have no idea. And that same night, it's like 12 at night, and I call her and I'm like, "Hey," I was just informed what's going on. Like, what? Like, can you please tell me more? I'm like, I have resources. Like, we will help you. Like, I have a community. I have people that are willing to support you. And she goes and says, we're gonna be leaving here in the next month. And I'm like, why? Like, why are you doing it? Like, she's like, we're afraid. There's it's the drones are outside our house. These people, are out here and she's like, "It's scary." And so I call her and I'm like talking to her and I was like, "Well, let me help you. Let me see what I can do." She's like, "They're literally, DACA recipients." And she's like, been here since she was, I think, one. She was back when she was a baby from Mexico. And it's one of those things where you want to hold on to somebody because, the fear of not knowing what's going to be out there, right? And so I'm talking to her and I'm telling her, like, let me support you. Let me see what we can do. So I'm moving stuff around. She's like, we're going to drive, we're going to go do this. And she's giving me details about what's happening. And finally we decide we're like, okay, I had to respect her wishes. I can't keep pushing. And she's afraid. She's like, we're afraid, what if they end up taking me or her husband? They're both DACA recipients, no criminal record, they've done what they had to be where they're at. They went from living in a basement to live, finally be able to buy their own home. And so, they did the whole process. They did what was the right way, apparently, what is the right way at this point, right? So they're like, we did it all, and they were struggling. I think it was another thing that was a fear for them was they were struggling financially because the Trump administration had decided to take CDLs away from DACA recipients. It was a big thing, or, some type of license away.
Yep.
And her husband was a CDL driver, and they take that away from them. That's their main income. And so they're like, we're afraid, this is what's happening now. What if this happens next. So I was like, okay, every time that I would talk to her, I would tell her like, please just stay. Let's figure it out. Haven Watch, the who I'm with, offered the support and was like, we'll help. We can help you. And then not just Haven Watch, but also I had a lot of the influencers were amazing and were willing to support. I got a lot of support from all these other influencers that were like, will help to make the transition for them better. And so just talking to them and, I had helped previously with other families out of deport, but when it came to my own family, I literally was like blocked. I didn't know. My anxiety was like off the roof. I didn't know. I was stuck. Even right now, I don't know the words to use or say because it became very hard to see my own family go through this situation. And we're talking or whatever, and she's like, yeah, we're just gonna drive out. They didn't have the funds, so they're gonna drive out and fly out of Chicago. And they have the 4 kids. And I'm like, wow, that's gonna be very hard to drive with 4 kids and then fly and get a flight to where their destination was. And I'm like, well, let me see what we can do. Maybe we can make the transition a little smoother. She's like, we're only taking our one carry-on for each. She's been here 34 years. So one carry-on for your whole entire life and for your kids' whole entire life sounded crazy to me. And so I'm like, well, let me see what I can do. So we came up and the organization helped and we were able to get them flights from Minnesota to Chicago and then Chicago to Mexico. But also help them with their luggage and make the transition a little smoother. But it's one of those things where it doesn't feel real, I think that it's really hard to see them going through the situation. One, because her kids don't speak Spanish. They are citizens. And now people fail to realize there is a process to become a citizen in Mexico. You can't just
dump people there.
You can't just dump people anywhere, actually. So it's like one of those things where she was like, well, we have to wait the process. So she was telling me like, we have to get them registered, give them dual citizenship for them because they can't just because we're from here, they can't just come over. So it was like a process. And it's hard. It's hard to see my own family go through this because she's been here all her life. She doesn't know Mexico. She doesn't know anything. Yeah, she speaks Spanish. Yeah, but she didn't grow up there. This is home for her. Her family is here. Her mom's here. Her brother's here. Like, we're all here. And she literally had to go with her husband. Her husband does have family in Mexico, but my cousin doesn't have family. Her kids were afraid because they were struggling to find a school that could fit my cousin's son's needs. It's one of those things where, a kid or a teenager, instead of being able to get free education and worry about his education, he's worried about moving or transition. And he's like, he had the hope to still be able to do his education while he was in Mexico. And he was afraid. And, we were able to, I think some of the influencers donated 2 computers actually for them. They donated computers so they could do virtual learning. And my cousin's son says, Mom, he's like, don't worry, we're going to be able to go back home. For a kid that age to say, hey, Mom, he's only 15. Mom, we're going to go back home. I'm going to do what I have to. He's like, I'm going to make sure I can get my education and do virtual learning. And I'll make sure that when I'm old enough, we'll be able to go back. It's sad. It's sad to see these kids go through this. It's a big change. Because all their life, their church, everything's here. So it's very hard. It's one of those things where I don't wish it on anybody, but there's a lot of families and a lot of people going through this. Like, it's not an easy process. There's a lot of people being their rights ripped away because of a status. They built everything. They paid taxes. They worked hard. Not once did they ask for government assistance. Not once did they did everything the right way that is supposedly the right way for this government, right? And what's their excuse for these people? What is the excuse for the people that actually didn't do anything, didn't commit a crime, have been doing it the right way? It's injustice. It's very unfair that so many, not just my own family, but so many go through this. So many are in fear because of this.
And just to be clear, I don't speak Spanish, so as far as that video, I wasn't able to understand what they said on there. As far as the kids, how old are they?
My cousin's oldest son, I think he's 15. Melanie is 13, and then a 5 and a 1.5-year-old.
Jesus. And then did you say, I thought I heard you say previously, and do any of the children speak Spanish?
They they understand it. They don't speak it very well.
Okay.
They will understand some, but they don't speak much Spanish.
Yeah. So obviously the transition being, 15 or whatever at that point, like that's got to be an incredibly, not only, it's tough enough that you're leaving, but obviously you have to add that on it as well. That's a huge jump.
I say, he was struggling.
Yeah.
They were all struggling. The 2 oldest were struggling because they were close to my aunt. They are close to the church and the community. They had friends here. They had their life here. So for them to have to up and go because their parents are afraid and their dad lost their job and could no longer maintain their home, you know, it is scary because as parents, you want to protect your kids. You want to do what's best for your kids. And my cousin and her husband have worked really, really hard to do what they can for their kids. And then all of a sudden just be ripped away from them. All that hard work that they put in, all the, you know, their home, having to put up their home on the market and just make that big transition is scary.
Yeah, I mean, just the idea of being like homeowners, they're obviously taxpayers, they've done all this stuff. And if they're DACA recipients, like whatever benefits they receive are still minimal compared to a full citizen. So they're still like paying in more taxes than they're probably receiving back than an average person. So you got to think of stuff like that. It's still, yeah. This is just an awful situation. So, as far as your, we'll maybe call it like the fortitude mentally to continue on and keep pushing this, how is bringing your own family and the own personal thing into this? Has it made you kind of more passionate and want to continue harder, or how is that? If is it was it really tough to overcome?
There's days where it's hard, right? There's days like we all have good days and we all have bad days. But I would say that it did become very hard for me to understand and process some of it because, I never in my life did I imagine that my own family would be in this position today, right? With all the stuff that was going on. But then it's also like it gives a peace to me where she says we're gonna be okay. We're gonna be able to leave our home and we're not gonna live in fear. Which that gave me some type of like, okay, they're gonna be okay. She's gonna be okay. Her kids are gonna be okay. And so just me thinking like I'll do anything to continue to support her and make sure that they're okay has been a thing. But you know, it is hard. I would say it's very hard for me sometimes just because I continue to support and help these families. And a lot of, I continue to support families that are self-deporting. And it's sad. It's hard. It's a sad process because a lot of them come here for a better future, for a better life. Some of these countries, poverty is insane. The money's not there. You struggle to have food on your table. It's scary. It's scary to send people back that were fleeing the crime, fleeing the terror, fleeing the hunger, fleeing all that crazy stuff from all these other countries. It's sad to have to send them back. It's sad because they come here and they want a better life. And a lot of the people, I mean, like I said, there's good and there's bad people, right? But can say and I can speak for what I've worked with and all the people I've seen. The majority are hard workers and are embarrassed to even ask or receive any type of donation from us. We've had people say, like, apologize because they're receiving donations. So is it really what they make people out to be? Or, there is, I understand that there's both sides, but I would say it's hard. There's days where it's harder for me, and there's days where I just say anything to help these families, anything to make it any better.
Yeah, I almost think that especially with these families that have like a sole breadwinner or something like that, I think what they're intentionally trying to do is make those people feel just so like you're like a failure or something. You can't even raise your family. You can't even take care of them financially. You can't do that stuff and break them down to make them feel, especially people that take so much pride in it, and to just like beat them down and beat them down and make them feel like hopeless,
I think that's what happens with
economically and,
yeah,
yeah,
like
yeah.
I think that that's what it is. Honestly, like I think that's a good example of my own family. They were literally hanging by a thread after they have bought a home. They had set themselves up and then everything swept away just like that. Just because of a status that they decided to change a lot of rules on. My cousin was like, I'm failing my family because he was the main provider. And then they have to move and start all over to something that is not what,
Yeah, yeah. It's like the shame is the intentional, that's awful. So as far as obviously you work with Haven, you're doing court support, you're doing obviously the self deportations that hits your own family. I know when we talked early on, it was like, hey, as the support that people needed really started to evolve over time. Like at first, it was like simple things to get by, and then it became long term structural support, like financial long term. Like, can you talk to me about some of the examples of things that you've encountered with people?
you know, we've seen the difference. I definitely seen it when I started with mutual aid with groceries and providing basic necessities of groceries, hygiene. And then, people were like, imagine being stuck at your home for 2 months and not being able to work. So now it's a financial responsibility. Like I have to keep a house over my kid's roof. I gotta maintain it, food on the table. But then they're afraid and they don't go to work because I'm snatching people up from work sites.
Mhm.
Uh, So it is scary to see that, the difference. It went from those basic necessities to very long-term financial help like rent, helping them find housing, and then, going from helping them find housing to, well, it's so much that we can't even catch up, so we're gonna go back to our country is like the last. But it's hard. It's really hard to see like people that, they're being detained and they're being held for a month, 2 months, and then they come out and they're told, oh, well, you got kicked out, you got evicted from your home. So then it's like we're like now we have to find, help them find a stable home, help, and that's where Haven has, I think, is a blessing. We come in and we try to do as much as we can to support these families that have been detained with ICE, and then they need that support. And sometimes they need a little bit longer support just because they're struggling to find work, or because their status, or a lot of them were homeless without IDs or without their documentation. So now they're struggling to get their documentation again. So it is scary. It's one of like, it was a process. It literally went from basic necessities to then the final is like, they're tapped out. So they're like, we're just going to self deport. And when it comes to the self deportation stuff, I think it's very hard. I think for me, a lot of the stories and a lot of the families that I've helped, they have kids. Like that's what gets me a lot is the kids. That it's like, the kids are dragged along with all this crazy nonsense. And then they're asking questions, and you're just like, I don't know the answer. I don't know what to tell these kids when they're asking you these questions. Like, why are we leaving home? Is a question that I've gotten from some of these kids. It's like, where are we going? Why are we leaving our home? It's a question that I kept getting asked by some kids. And I'm like, I don't know the answer for these kids. So I just say, like, you're going to make a better home. You're going to be in a better place. You're going to be free. You're going to go see, I will try to make it better.
Yeah, which is terrifying because you know the reality, It's so, and I just think of like this country, just the way it is, like anybody is one like big accident or something away from financial ruin, essentially. And it's like a snowball effect of like one thing is, you lose your job or whatever, everything just starts piling on, piling on. I feel like that is 100%. I mean, I know it's 100% intentional in order to scuttle all these communities that are very largely independent, working, surviving on their own, not sponging off the government like everybody would act like, some of the hardest working people in the entire country. The last thing I guess I would say is one of the things that I've noticed over this time, and I've really struggled with personally, and I've talked to you about this before, but I think originally when I started doing even just what I'm doing right now and reporting and doing stuff like that, I think a part of me was trying to convince people that we were on the road to establishing like apartheid in America. Over my time just knowing you, hearing from your experiences, let alone everything else going on, but hearing it more directly from you, it's a lot more like visceral and real than just seeing the news, what's going on because you get a lot more like close to what's happening.
I definitely do get a lot of close to what's happening, and I think that it's real.
Yeah.
That's my thing. I will say it is real. It is happening, and people I don't s sometimes I ask myself this question every single day, like, how can people walk around and act like there's nothing going on? Like, there's literally kids being snatched up. There's people like, this is real. Like, it's being separated from their parents. There's people, you know it's a good example, like, outside of Whipple. How can people sit here and go play a sport? Is my good like a good example, which they've been really nice to us. I don't get me wrong, they've been very amazing to Haven. But like how can I think there's like a tennis club across the street,
Yeah,
if I'm
for
not
sure.
mistaken. And it's like you see people walking in and out of that building like nothing, and there's
Mm-mm,
people being
mm-mm.
maced, dragged, and so on. And it's just like, how do you just go on and do something and just like ignore it?
That was one of the weirdest parts of being at Whipple. It was like standing there and they're like, don't worry, like those people will just here for tennis. And it's like, yeah,
It was
it's
just go on about your whole day. Like, let's just go play
fucking
tennis
weird.
while people are being, you know, abused across the street. Like,
Yeah,
it's so crazy. Like,
it's true.
literally, this is history shit. Like, it's insane to see that it is happening. People educate yourselves. Your history. That it is.
Yeah.
The stuff that we already lived, but just more modernized.
Yeah. Well, I think what I was gonna say is so basically I think I was like, yeah, I'm trying to convince people that this is coming. And then I would be like, let's just say slipping into, my ability. I'm white. I have the ability to like sleep at night and turn things off and, just go live about my life. And so those times when obviously I'm thinking I'm well connected. But those times where I'm just living my life and I would, be like walking through like Costco. I remember one time and I gave you a call and it's like fucking reality hits when you're like, oh, no, apartheid is here. There's very, distinct lives and worlds happening right next to each other, right, here. And I would hear the stories from you and it's like it just feels like you're being like you're in a whole nother world, from
I agree. I would say that that's how I feel sometimes. It's like i- there's days where they feel okay and they feel normal, right? And then there's days where you're just like, holy moly, like this is really happening. This is what we're living. And then, yeah, they say that ICE is gone. They say, but they're really not. The thing is, they're really not gone. I think they catched up to everything and they want to change what they're doing, and they're not gone. They're still, out there. They're still harassing people. And they just picked a whole new state to mess with right now. So it's like they know what they're doing. And these people I honestly think that any human, I mean, if you have some type of compassion, you know, you won't treat humans, dehumanize them, nor beat on them, nor treat them the way because they're, you know, out there protesting peacefully. So I think it's crazy because I think I remember when I met you, it was like we were outside here in the Woodbury hotels because ICE was staying there. And then we're like, out there and we're being told because we're out there protesting, we're going to get arrested. Like,
yeah,
it's like either you choose to get arrested or, just stay quiet. And it's one of those things because there's not many people out here, protesting. But then when I feel like when everything started happening and then the amazing community stood up and came out was amazing to see that. It's amazing to see that nobody is alone. The just not the Latino community, but just every immigrant, you're not alone.
So I guess just, one thing that we've kind of talked about in the past, I think there's some people have assumptions about other communities, and they think that just because someone is Black, Hispanic, Latino, or something like that, that they just automatically support the type of work you are doing, or, something like that. How does that work in, your community, as far as like how accepted is what you're doing, or how, like, taboo is, do you feel?
There was a lot of people out there for the mutual aid. I would say there was a lot of people that were like, let's help with the mutual aid, let's do this. But as things started, slowing down, I think there was not many Latino community out there anymore. And I want them to be out there. I want them to continue to support, even if you can't support mutual aid wise or doing that. But there's a lot of families that still need that support, that need that guidance. It is still happening. And I would say, like, it feels like I say, raise your voice. Don't be afraid. Stand up. Stand up for what's right. If you can, stand up. And I would say, like, I wish I could see, yes, we are being targeted. Yes, we are afraid. But do we live in fear, or do we stand against it and use our fear to make us stronger and to make us fight back? Because if we stay in fear, then we're going to continue to be terrorized, and we're going to continue, and we're just going to sit in it. So I say, stand up, raise your voice, don't be afraid. Yeah, there's days where you can be afraid, but use it to be your strength, not to keep you quiet and still.
Before we move on to the next topic, this just kind of works perfectly. But obviously, like I said, you know, any bit of me that's been like, thought that I was really tough or could handle all these crazy shit. I see the stuff that you're doing, and I'm just like, I have no idea how the fuck you handle all this, or mentally you keep up. Well, like,
Hey, I don't know myself.
when you're in your worst days, what is
My own kids, it keeps me going, but then other people's kids and the fear of, what they're, just because that little support goes a long way. I think that that's what keeps me going, is like knowing that they need us out there. They need it, because I'm okay, right? I'll be okay. But they won't be okay. They will run that risk of, getting taken and then sitting in there for a while. And then who knows what happens to their kids, or who knows what happens to whatever, So it's like, that gives me there's days where I'm like, oh, I can't do this any longer, right? And then I'm like, I get one and I'm like, I can't. I have to keep going. They need me. They need that support. They need us. People, I say, please, if there's anybody out there that wants to help and support, we are in need of supporters more than anything. Hispanics that can speak Spanish and English, like, we need the support. Like, there's a lot of families that are in need, and we still need it, as much as it might not be it might not be out there as much as it was when the whole rate stuff happened, but we do need the support. We need more help out there that can be, helping us with just the basic of translating, or just the basic of helping them get a ride. It doesn't take much, honestly.
yeah. All right, let's see. I think the next area basically to talk about, when we talk about the children and the kind of things that are going on there, a lot of people, when they think about Whipple, they don't realize that Whipple is technically it's not even necessarily a detention center. It's supposed to technically, I think, be for only like momentary holding, even though we know that's bullshit. Let's just say.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's meant.
In theory, it's like office holding that they added leg irons, I believe.
Well, yes.
Pulls it.
Well, when the whole thing happened, they kicked literally everybody out of the building. I don't know if you knew that, but like at some point, when ICE took over the building, there was people. Yeah. So there was like a point where literally it was just all ICE agents. Like,
interesting.
But it's a thing. It's like, what the heck? And then they are holding people in there, which they're not supposed to. But
so
there's a lot of things we're not supposed to do.
Yeah. So the plan is working on it. So one of the previous guests I had was Nick Benson. He's the person who's been flight tracking for 50501. So if anybody doesn't know, when people get brought to Whipple, and then they're brought to another detention center somewhere else, to an actual detention center. And so what they do is they transfer them on a bus to the airport. They take one of these charter flights, as I kind of covered in my previous episode, to the different facilities there. So, and then also what we also found out is that families, they're not being sent that way. Families they're not showing up in Whipple. They're sending them through like Delta, actually, and flying them on commercial airlines through the actual airport to those facilities. But I have a video here. This is, someone I'm sure we'll find familiar, talking with someone who I believe this was in Dilley, Texas, which you probably have seen people that get returned here that were held in those other areas as well. So let's watch this video and then we'll talk after.
Really miss your school and your friends?
Very much.
Aw.
Don't you be there to be happy. Miss all of them. If you could help us to live this.
You want us
I don't
to?
want to be here anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. It's good here.
Oh, I'm so sorry. A lot of people want to try to help.
I want to live or go to the spelling bee.
You have a real gift for spelling. You're so smart.
When I eat the food from here, my stomach starts hurting.
David, you know what? We talked to your teachers today. We talked to the principal in your school, and they miss you so much.
I wish I could live before the spelling bee.
Yeah, we're gonna try.
Look at what he's doing. He's sending you a heart.
Oh my God, so much love.
So before you respond here, an update, I did actually have an additional video after that I had found. He did make it to that spelling bee.
That's amazing.
Which is amazing. So I think that was from maybe a month or so, a little bit longer. But obviously people that are also fighting for this, Miss Rachel has been a fierce advocate for, shutting down Dilley and the other detention centers. But after watching that video, do you have any thoughts on the situation? I know we talked about children and stuff like that, the effects.
It's hard to watch those videos. I think that's why I keep doing what I do. Because of those videos, I keep fighting for these kids. He's not a criminal, and it gets very hard to see kids begging to be released. So I think that's my motivation is I want, if I had it in me, I would probably go to where it's happening and try to do everything I could for these kids as well, because it's hard. It's sad to see these kids in the conditions they're in.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really gets me as well is I just anytime I see any one of these situations, whether it's here, God, even when you're talking about like Gaza and stuff, you think about it, it's just like all I thought about was, I was a parent, so all of a sudden you just start imagining like
that could be,
well, what would happen if that was my kid, or what would that situation be like, or I remember even just like having formula shortages and having to run around everywhere and like the crazy shit that you do just to like take care of your kid, and you see people going through these situations. And so I think the one thing that I always try to like put out to other people is to try to, hey, like show these children, like how could you not see your own kids in this,
yeah, it goes to the inhumanity thing. Like only selfish people probably would. I don't know how to even put it in words, but these kids could be your kids. These kids could be our kids, and they're being treated inhumanely, And so for me, I think that's why I keep doing what I do. And I think that's why I will continue, even when there's times where it's hard because of these cases like this. Become very hard to see other parents and other families going through it and asking for help because their kid or their parents are detained. I don't see them as criminals. They're innocent little human beings.
Yeah, of course.
So they need to stop saying criminals, criminals, criminals. They're innocent humans, innocent human beings. Those children do not deserve to be locked away like that. They deserve to be in school like the rest of our kids.
Yeah. And so I want to continue on basically. So Miss Rachel has been doing a lot of work. She's, I believe, from New York. So now there's the Delaney Hall Detention Center that is very well in the news right now in New Jersey. So I want to bring up a video of her actually in New Jersey. I got a couple thoughts there, but basically a couple of things going on there that have sprung up over time. Actually, they did this before Haven Watch was actually established. There's a group of people that have been out there since, I believe, about October that have set up. I don't know. I think they originally were just out there. They've upgraded to like some nice tents and have quite a setup there now. But basically, that started a place to do the same thing to help people, families of people detained, and helping people with resources when they are released, and all the different same mutual aid things as well. So I think it's kind of interesting to see the similar things popping up around the country. But this is a group of Miss Rachel actually showed up there the other day. Actually, before I do this one, hold on, I'm going to just talk about this one really quick because it just goes into the mutual aid there just to show the comparison.
Protests getting demolished at a nice facility in New Jersey. And I was there. I was at Delaney Hall twice this week. And I'll tell you, that's a story, but it's not the story. And I want people to focus up. I'm going to be talking about some gnarly stuff. So I want to start with something good and inspiring, because 100 feet away from those protests outside the facility is a group of volunteers who have been there since October, providing mutual aid for the detainees themselves and their families. These guys are fucking heroes. They were out there since October. They didn't have a tent. They were out there in the winter, in the cold.
It's very brutal, and a lot of families live far enough away they can't even get here, and that's where a lot of our volunteers step in, and they go in and visit people that they have never even met, but they kind of adopt a detainee and try and see them as often as they can. Wow. And from the detainees, they get information about other detainees who we may know nothing about, and we can get their information to try and get them commissary money, which they can use for both food and to make phone calls, which they have to pay for.
Phone calls are $5 a day.
Yeah.
$5 a phone call.
A phone call, yeah. And it's, half an hour, which seems like a long time, but when you've been in a detention for 2 years, it's nothing.
For the last 11 days, the detainees inside the facility have been on a hunger and labor strike over conditions. They've been given food that is expired and contains worms. They don't have access to medical care and haven't since October. There's been 2 miscarriages and a death. People are getting sick because of the food in there, and so they are going on a hunger and labor strike. A labor strike, you ask? Yes, because detainees are forced to work for $1 a day, cleaning their own facility because they don't have sufficient maintenance staff. And this $1 a day can net them such great rewards as a phone call eventually, because a phone call costs $5. A can of tuna fish costs $5. You have to work 5 full days to get a can of fucking tuna fish. Posting a link to the mutual aid group that's down there. They've raised almost $100,000 for the people on the inside, and the job's not done because there's still hundreds and hundreds of people who have very reasonable demands. All they want is their cases to be reviewed, for the building to be inspected, and for the vulnerable populations such as women and children and people with chronic conditions to be released, because it is not safe for them to be in there. I don't think that's a lot to ask. So remember, even if your feed is covered with distressing videos of like martial law and curfews and whatnot, that's not the story. You can do real good for real people by helping the heroes who have been volunteering there for months, quietly behind the scenes, not drawing attention to themselves.
Before I ask you anything, do you got any thoughts on that?
It's hard to watch, because we lived it, where it's kind of the same thing that is happening. We just went through it. So it's one of those things where the struggle, right? Because Haven currently does the same work, right? We try to help those that are being released and those that are, and I would say, don't give up. People, we need volunteers, please. Like, that action won't, doesn't hurt. Be out there, and at least if you're not willing to support in certain ways, then there's other ways you can support. It doesn't have to be, financially. It doesn't have to be, ways that you might feel like you can't, but there's other ways. There's other ways you can support.
Yeah, I definitely just see obviously it's the same thing as, Haven and everything they've been going through. I think one of the things that's kind of amazing is that, as horrible as what happened in Minnesota, Haven was able to get an amazing amount of publicity for it, and was able to raise like very legitimate funds to at least to be able to like operate. Whereas these people have been doing it with up until now, like very little publicity and
I think
Yeah.
it's scary because it's like they're doing it once again, they didn't get that much funds or that much publicity, but it's I think, trying to partner up or figure out other ways with other resources out there it's the go to.
All right. And so this is another video actually of Miss Rachel outside the facility, and she's with a family of some of the people that were detained. So we're gonna watch this video here.
Went to go visit my dad, and it was really sad because they were all I looked at my dad and he looked like a prisoner, but I knew in my heart that he shouldn't be in there. And it was really sad seeing my dad just like there, and we have to sit in a table just like in front of him to like see him and talk to him only for half an hour, and I wish it was more time.
So I don't know. It really just I struggle with this because we were talking about some of the things before of that fear that gets people to even like self-support or even just think of doing that, and that shame, and that person just like crying, like that they were just so broken down from even having to ask for help, or whatever the case. But I almost feel like when you look at these private prisons, they talked about it earlier. These people are here, they're running the facilities. They're actually doing the maintenance. They're working in there for like $1 a day. It takes them 5 days to afford a 30-minute phone call. And she just mentioned there, like, I wish I could see him more than, I think the visitation is like 30 minutes too. And it's like you even have to sign in. There's a process, and they're like, by the time we get in there, it's already like been like 10, 15 minutes or something. And then you might see him for like 10, 20 minutes if you're lucky, but I feel like it's just like at some point they're just breaking people down and trying to get them to the point where they will start doing labor. And we're talking about the most, independent, like hardworking people in this country that are like the builders, the doers, and doing all this stuff. What kind of thoughts do you have about that, as far as like maybe that video, and just any thoughts?
It it's hard. I mean, I don't sometimes I'm like we're it's repeating, right? Because families here were going through that too, right? So it's a repeat cycle. And what else do we call it? Inhumanity. I mean, what I don't know what else to call it. I don't even have words for it, right? Because these people literally what they're going through, and they were probably picked up at a work site, like you said, so they're hardworking people. And I don't know what to call it, honestly. It's inhumanity.
Slavery is
I
what
would
it
say
is.
slavery as well. I mean, but whoever's in there working, or the officers or whatever, like, how can you stand by something like this is my question. How can you continue to support to see these kids go through this? How, like, it's inhumane, and I don't know, like, you got me here with this one because it's hard to watch and sad.
I would almost argue that I'm sure there's some people that are in there because they just hate immigrants, let's just say, or something. I'm sure there's someone out there,
Oh,
but
of
I almost
course.
think at some point, it's almost like, how do you get the people to do the work? You put them in this economic shame and this awful situation that they're just basically like, that's this all they have to work for. And you want to see your family, you're going to work 5 days to fucking see them for 30 minutes, So then you're like, well, how are these people that working there doing this, you sick fucks, And it's like, well, I'm sure, I still have my own judgments, but just to, reserve those for the moment, I would say they're probably already also economically debased as well, because we live in a country that is fucking economically debasing. So, we have, people all over that are struggling, and they're going to take the best, shit opportunity if that's all that they have,
And I think that that's what I think it goes to is like they come from, like I said, some countries with poverty that is bad. So they will do whatever it is to survive and to, be able to see their families. I think that they're pushed to be like, you have no choice, right? They're pushed to, you have to do it if you want to eat. If if you don't have that family member on the other side that is going to be able to keep money on your account or be able to help you financially, is where you will struggle. You will have to, basically work for that bare minimum to be able to get that one call, which is, it's insane. It's sad to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. I feel like it's just how this whole thing gets perpetuated, you know. Um, and even when it comes to like someone like yourself, you're just like, you see this is awful. I think anybody rightfully can just look up and be like, holy shit, this is awful. And at some point you're actually physically out there trying. As anybody who's been out there trying knows, everybody has a limit, whether it's a fiscal or your money's gonna dry up, your energy, you got kids you gotta raise, you got all this shit going on. Everybody has a fucking limit, you know? So it's like the more they could economically stifle us, the less people are going to be able to just stand up because they physically are running out of resources, you know?
And I think that's what they want, right?
Yeah.
They want people to give up. They want people to stop fighting for what's right, right? And so it's like, I would say keep fighting and don't give up. There's gonna be hard days. There's gonna be shitty days. Trust me, there's gonna be days where you might yourself have a shitty encounter with these shitty people, right? I myself have had one, and there was another example that I can probably give is at the airport. I'm helping somebody self-deport, and it's a good example. Like, it was one of those moments where I literally was angry. I was angry, and I was very upset that at the airport, I mean, obviously everybody knows what a real ID is, right? We all know that here in the States, you need a real ID to fly anywhere. I mean, so it's like when I'm flagged and, my real ID was like, they scan you and they keep scanning you, and it's one of those personal situations where I was very angry that I was asked, where was I born? And I'm giving you a real ID. So, they continue to figure out ways
Yeah.
to like mess with you and screw up with you. And that situation made me angry. It made me feel like I literally felt like I was going to be done with everything. And I was like, the amount of discrimination was like, I'm done. I don't want to. But then again, I'm like, they need people. They need us. They need everybody to be out there. And if you can support it, any form, any little drop of your support will make a big difference. It doesn't have to be in a big amount. It doesn't have to be a lot. I always say that, just a little bit. Give just that little drop will make a big difference.
Yeah. So I guess one thing I was thinking of is that a lot of people, don't realize that as we talk through this whole story and all these things happen, you are also a student and you actually went and finished your degree this year. So congratulations on, graduating. But we're also doing that. You're raising your child, so you're a mother as well. Can you just tell me about like what that takes to physically pull all of this off?
I have no idea, honestly. Like, I literally was a full-time student at some point, was working and taking care of my house, and then also having to take care of my kids. And I would literally be like, we have to help them. I would tell, even with my 12-year-old, I would talk to her and I would tell her, honey, we will be okay, but they are not okay. Today is for them. What about tomorrow's for us, right? We don't know what holds, right? We don't know. And I am struggling. I do struggle. And it's like you work, and it's like that's what we live in right now is we're working so hard and we continue to work, and it's like we still get shit, right? And that's a conversation we've had before where I think that's what gets me sometimes. It was like through the whole process, I actually stepped down from work. And my husband was the only one working and was just, but in this economy, in this generation that we live in now, it's impossible, right? It's impossible. And the struggle is real. Hey, I think
Yeah.
that's another thing that keeps me going is, the struggle is real, and you can either choose to continue to live in the struggle, or you will make it out of the struggle, and you want more for yourself. And I see that for myself, but not just for myself, but for all these other families. I will continue to do, because I know that I will be okay. So I will continue to fight for them and continue to do what I can, even if it's a little bit here and a little bit there. I just say, God, I think God gives me the strength. My kids give me the strength. Amazing people that I've met like yourself. I mean, we've talked and we've grown to have a very great communication. And I think that talk about it. Don't hold it in. There is people out there that care. When there's days where I felt like tapping out, and you are my witness for it, and I think you also felt at some point you were also, going through it and having a hard time. And, I think that a lot of people with egos in this kind of situation don't blend. And I would say that it happens. We went through it, right? And it's hard for people to understand, but if it just doesn't blend with the mutual aid, it doesn't blend with everything else. So I would say there is amazing people. And I think I'm very thankful that I have met amazing like yourself. And, when I felt like giving up and when I felt like I was done with everything, there was blessings. I mean, look at, if I'm not mistaken, like every time I felt like I was done with everything, here came a blessing along. Here came Craig the kitchen guy,
Andrea
and Andrea,
yeah.
and these amazing people, these amazing influencers that came in and would save me from tapping out. And then it would be the way one was like, keep going. And it was my sign from God saying, don't give up. You can keep going. You can keep giving. And it was like, all right, keep going, keep giving. And I think that I was like 3 times in a row. Honestly, I can say it was 3 times in a row.
I mean, the fact that Young Gravy.
Oh, that's another amazing one too. He was, that was my first round of donation.
What?
Yeah, I was like, who? And they were like, yeah, Young Gravy. And he,
Oh my God! I wanna add that video of I think it was an actual video from that.
Around in Minnesota doing big Costco runs this week to the immigrant families. So
you guys, what is going on with Young Gravy? Well, it's your favorite devil women here, and plot twist of the century, we are your temporary gravy train conductors this week. So welcome aboard, all you little devils, and I'm gonna give you the rundown of what we've been up to exactly here on the ground, because Gravy is underestimating the work he's been doing over the last month or so. For starters, yes, we are here at Costco today. We've been here for multiple days now, restocking local pantries everywhere and feeding dozens, if not hundreds of families who aren't safe leaving their homes right now. But this actually started back in January. When everything was happening here in Minneapolis and I was panicked, I reached out to all of my mutuals to try and help, and Gravy really stepped up and showed out. And we cooked up a plan here over the last few weeks. He started by going through a bunch of GoFundMes and donating a ton of money because obviously, as you know from my content, I've been really busy on the ground. But now that we have some more time, we have been running Costco runs nonstop all week, and we have filled up multiple pantries to feed immigrant families that are hiding and they do not feel safe to leave their homes right now. And he hesitated to talk about it publicly because he didn't want to make it about him. He doesn't like tooting his own horn, but I'll do it for him. We're all extremely grateful and thankful for him stepping up and helping here. People have been crying all week as we've been delivering supplies. So from the bottom of my heart, I'm eternally grateful, and thank you. Stay gravy, baby.
So
yeah, he was amazing to support us. And I actually
forgot about it.
Yeah, no, there was amazing people supporting my little mutual aid, which I am super blessed and thankful for. And I am beyond thankful. I will say that for sure. I'm beyond thankful. I met amazing people and people that was like, guy like an angel from the sky that was sent to me, honestly, because then it was Gravy and then it was Duet.
Yeah, Wolf Farmer. I was going to say Wolf
Yeah.
Farmer because actually it's funny because it's almost like his court case and the fact that he was stuck in Minnesota probably helped you as well as many other people mutually, like at the way out.
Yeah, and then it was like amazing people, and then there was like back pocket thrips,
Yeah, correct.
and we were like, there were so many amazing people that did not give up, and that they continue, and then they continue to support us. Honestly, like I'm sick. I always make Craig the chicken guy was honestly my angel sent from heaven, because he literally, came and saved me from shutting down 3 times. So I am thankful for him. I am thankful for him and every single person that has supported the journey and has supported me and my mutual aid stuff. And I think that I will continue to do what I can as much as I can with what I can, and I still have to take care of myself. So, right now, just mentally, I have said, I got to take care of myself. So I would say I continue to do what I can when I can. And I'm still with Haven, and I really love Haven. The team there is amazing, and just everything that I'm doing with them has been freaking awesome. And I will continue to do every single thing I can for these kids and these families that need me. And I will not, I don't even think twice most of the time. It's like if I get a call and they're like, hey, we need you right now. I'm like, well, tell me where, what do I have to do? Like, I'm there. And I think it's awesome. And I think that through this whole process, it's been hard because some of my family members don't understand what I'm doing, you know? So it's like you run into that contradiction with your own family too. Like, oh, well, you continue. And I'm like, and then I have my biggest support, which has been my older sister for it. So she's been supporting me through the whole thing. And she continues to guide me while she's struggling on her own, single mom, having to figure it out. So it's like, hey, but she continues to support me so I can continue to support these families. And I think that that's what gets me through is that little support system, that little, that late night talk with you or that late night talk with, with the organization or whoever's me out because there's days where I am tapped out.
Yeah, I always see you. I always see you like post something in the middle of the night. I'm like, oh, I'll talk to you.
Yeah, no, you're amazing for that, and I'm thankful. But I do say I'm big on it. I'm big on, my mental health awareness for kids.
Yeah.
I am big on it. They, it's real, and this nightmare that we're living it is affecting people mentally and emotionally, and that will cause a toll on people. So I would say, just checking in on anybody, even those families that are detained. Don't, answer that phone call. Don't, or whatever, give them that hope. Don't, stand by them. They need that. Don't give up on these people. A lot of these people are not criminals, is where I go. They are amazing parents, amazing families that are just trying to make a better life for their kids or for their families. They are trying to give them a better future than what they had in their countries. So don't give up on them. And, we all deserve second chances, is where I go with this. Is everybody deserves a second chance. There is hope out there. And I will say this again and again. They will, give what just that little drop will make a big difference.
Yeah. Those are amazing words of hope there. So I guess one thing I did want to talk about is obviously there's a lot of people that we made it through Metro Surge, and then basically we're like, hey, it's over, and went back to their life. March Madness have kind of moved on, and we've talked about our frustrations with that as well. But there's more news that's continuing to happen, as well as obviously we see all the stuff that's happening in Delaney Hall. Well, shit, it turns out Appleton, Minnesota, there's an additional facility that's, going to be popping up there. It's a private prison, so this isn't a government-run facility. It's a private GO group facility. It's been sitting dormant. It was closed in the past. They've just been sitting there maintaining it, basically, for when they could reopen it. And shit, what do we know? They're starting the process to get it reopened. So let's just watch this video really quick.
This is the Appleton detention facility that's being turned into an ICE concentration camp. I'm currently standing on Fairgrounds. It borders up against the Appleton Fairgrounds.
So I remember when I started kind of talking with some of the people from New Jersey, one of the things they said to us was, how long is this going to last? And all of us were like, sorry, but yet another reminder that this is an ongoing fight. But do you got any thoughts about that?
It's scary too. I mean, right? They tried to do it here in Woodbury.
Yeah.
Right? They tried to open a concentration camp out here. And then we were like, the community stood up and said, no way.
Yeah.
Right? And so now they're doing it again. And now it's official. It looks like it makes me angry. It makes me very angry because another inhumanity facility to keep people locked up and away. And I say this, is it the right way to say it? I don't know if it is the right or wrong way, but that's a concentration camp there that you just showed me.
Yeah.
I'm going to call it for what it is.
Yeah,
A concentration camp.
100%.
And
so is Delaney.
So is Delaney, yeah. So I'm like, I'm going to say for what it is. And I think it's crazy because I always tell people, if you make it to a county facility where they hold ICE, you're lucky, right? because they treat you different. You can see the difference, and I'm gonna make that very aware. Is if you are held in a concentration camp, basically they will basically treat you the worst, right? They will dehumanize you completely. And if you're in a facility where they actually rent to ICE and not only just house ICE, for example, Sherburne County, Sherburne County is also
It's like that one
it's a
is
jail.
an actual, and before we move on, that one is an actual agreement the county has. So it's a county jail, and they have agreed to work with ICE.
Correct. And they actually house their own county and they house others and then they house ICE, which I always say is whoever gets to be at a county jail, that what you said makes an agreement, you're lucky. And it's crazy to say you're lucky, but it's better than a concentration camp. And then because you'll see the difference. I've had stories from people that are held in Sherburne and they will tell me like, hey, well, we were actually allowed our calls. We were actually like allowed our showers. We were actually allowed food. Like they treated us
Yeah,
like
we thank
humans.
God.
We got it.
Thank God.
Thank God, right? And then you hear the story from people, for example, out in Texas that are at the concentration camp out there, and they will say, well, we were a lot of us in a cell, the little blankets that they gave them, and they were very dehumanized. And so I say, like, wow, this is scary. It's scary too that they're about to do that because the ones that don't, are saved and don't have to go out to those. Now it's like, what is going to happen? So it is scary. And so for me, I could say is there's something coming. I get scared to say it, but I feel like they have it's scary to say it, but I hope there's not, but we don't know with these people anymore.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. So I guess I got two questions, and I think I'll start with this one, and it'll probably lead into the other. But like when I first met you, it seemed like you were tapped into kind of what's going on in the world, or at least America, stuff like that. Is there something in particular that got you, what do they call it, radicalized? What I mean, into caring about kind of what's going on? I know. Obviously, the Renee Good's murder was brutal awakening for everybody, but you were paying attention before. This wasn't your first, moment. I think that was just what pushed you.
I think anybody that looks, social media, right? Anybody that goes on there or the news, right? I was the type that I didn't even want to watch it anymore because all you see is sad stuff going on in the world, crazy stuff happening, right? So there was a point where I was like not really into it. And then you're scrolling through your phone and these crazy videos of ICE start popping up and all this crazy stuff. And it was before like all of it started happening. But I've always been I have a big heart. So it's like I care for people deeply and I take things to the heart and I'm very like a personal person. So I would say like just watching it was one of the things, and then it was like one of those things that woke me up, and I have a passionate to care for people and care and just do. I think I would say do what's right. You have struggles in life and you go through things in life, and then it wakes you up, right? And I think that that's where I was at. I think that I had struggles. I went through stuff in life, and it woke me up. It woke me up in a way that was like, all right, this is and I have a passion for it. I always have. So it was like a big awakening for me.
So this is something that I really struggle with. But basically, as you got farther and farther into this work and you see all the just god awful things that are happening day in, day out, you hear firsthand, and obviously you probably have a bigger awareness firsthand of with the accounts of things going on than the average person. So obviously that's got to be very personal to you. But how do you go about like normal social situations? Like I don't even like doing small talk anymore because I'm just like, it's just so tough for me to just go without just like, how do you navigate that? I mean, do you struggle with it?
I actually do struggle with it. I'm going to be honest. I think that I went back to work and it's so hard because, I cut hair for a living. I'm a cosmetologist. And I'm talking to people, and then it's so hard because I want to raise that awareness. I don't want to keep my mouth shut about what we're living, right? So it's really hard for me because honestly, I don't think I'm after this, right? I don't think there's this. I think, whoever it is, I don't know what to call it, right?
Yeah.
But I think we've had this conversation before where I don't feel like I can have a conversation with people. I don't feel like there's certain people that you can actually have a full conversation about what's going on and what we're living, because they don't understand it. They don't see it. They don't really, they believe what's on the news, and then they go with what's on the news. So they don't really, they think everything's gravy and it's not. And you're like, well, that's not really what it is. I'm working up front with it and I'm living it. So it's really hard to actually even socialize. I think that just socially, I have really just haven't even done it.
Pulled back.
I've pulled back a lot just because I'm always, focused on helping and doing. I actually enjoy what I'm doing, so I'm okay with it. And it keeps me like, I have other stuff to worry about than to be hanging out with people that don't understand, that want to ignore what's going on in the world. And this is a reality check. I think that, I'm okay. And there's days where I just feel like it's weird, right? We're not.
So like being around those people that do care fills your cup, so to speak, to
Yeah,
Yeah.
it fills my cup to see for example, when I'm talking to you or when I'm talking to people that are out there actually like involved in doing all this, it makes me happy. It's where I like to, I don't think that ignoring it is the right thing. I feel like a lot of people are doing that. It's ignoring it and acting like there's nothing going on. And it's like, how can you live with it when your neighbor was just dragged out of their house by these ICE agents? So it's kind of like, I don't know how to normalize it anymore. Like, I think I'm just so normalized to my work and what I've been doing that I don't tend to really care to have another conversation, because that's most of the time when I want to raise that awareness, raise that it's happening and that it's out there. And I have to be careful with when I talk about it, because you don't know what reaction you will get.
Yeah. And obviously, through your family and things like that, you have a lot of, Latino, Hispanic people that you're around. Uh, One thing, so we first met Heidi, I went No Kings with her, and I followed her page and I looked in her comment section and it's all Spanish.
Yeah.
And then I started hitting translate and I'm like, this is like mega Spanish in her comments. Like, what is that like, as far as dealing with that? Is that like more common than people realize?
It's mind blowing to me, right? I think that it's sad to see that. But then so my thing with this, okay, I'm gonna try to say it, a nice way. I think that they're fucking idiots. I mean, what do you call it, right? But it's like, why? I get it. You're free to do whatever, but some of these people that are big
I'd say
mega
that of
fans,
white people that are doing it too. So I mean, that's fair.
those big mega Hispanic fans, I would say that I'm not a big politic person either. So,
Mhm.
but what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And if you support an idiot, then, I mean, I don't know what to call you then, right? Because it's like, you can see it. Like, what is, so it's like, am I done or what's going on? But I think that it's sad to see what, but then you go into some of these countries are run by the word that I'm looking for. It's like like a communist.
Yeah, like the dictatorships or whatever.
Thank you.
Yeah, like strong.
Strong.
Yeah.
They have that. So they're like, well, we'll take anything better than what we currently have. And that's where I think that's why. And I think that's why, and I'm not trying to justify it because I don't know. I don't really, I can't speak for them. I don't know what goes through their head. I mean, we promised a lot of things. So at the end of the day, like promises and all these things. So I don't really know what to say about this situation. I just think, to me, is people that can, I mean, let's call it for what it is. We go into all the shit that he's done and it's hard for again, like, a felon to get a job and, have one running our country. So, I mean, it goes to a lot of stuff. And I think that whoever supports it can be a little scary because he's inhumane.
Yeah. That's interesting. And I think there's some, as far as like, I think there was a lot of lies. And I think as much as I want to just like call people idiots and wholeheartedly agree, I think there's also a part where it's a failure of the Democratic establishment and all these people to actually materially do anything to help people out. And I think we got to a point where economically people were so hopeless that they're like, well, I guess, I mean, at the very least, during the first Trump term, it was like there were some economic benefits. I can't lie. I mean, there were, and I think that did not materialize one bit.
You know what I think this is where I go with this. I don't do, once again, I don't
Yeah, yeah.
know much of,
Yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
not a big fan of it, but he promised certain things. He said good things and he said bad things. I think that's what it happens with all of our presidents. Some of them say good things and do this, and so it's a pretty, but what I say is what is right and what is wrong is wrong. And I think that obviously we're going to talk about a little bit of the stuff that people don't want to see, the Epstein files. Let's call it for what it is, people. And I think that it is, it's crazy to me, right?
Yeah.
And so what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. That's where I go with that. And I don't agree with everything, and I don't, I can't disagree, but there's just so much crazy shit out there that I don't really, So I normally say, like right now with the ICE raids and all this stuff that we were having, it's inhumanity, and I see it, and that's why I'm against it. And that's why I'm like, fuck that, And I think that at some point, everybody in this, I would say it is in some form or way comes illegal
Yeah.
for the Hispanic community, at least.
Yeah.
I would say, right? So I don't really, some form or in some line of history or something, that's what happened. So when they are, supporting it and everything, it's really, really sad to see.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people forget about like things like Catholicism and how strong that is in, Central South America, Mexico, stuff like that, and there's a lot of conservative people, that are in those communities. So, I also think there's a lot of people that just did not fucking believe that this was going to happen the way it is running down. And I think they probably were like, this is just some overblown racism and not actually going to be followed up with what they're actually doing, which I think, honestly, I personally thought this would have maybe even happened from the beginning, but they just didn't have the power. So that was just me being naive and realizing that they didn't actually have what they needed in place to accomplish this.
And then I do see like
You know?
But then you see actual people like standing up already that did vote for this
Yeah.
and did go against
Right.
this. So they are opening their eyes.
Yeah, yeah.
And so
There's a lot.
but then there's the ignorance, right? There's always going to be ignorance, and I think that I, like you said at first, you were like, I didn't see it, and now we're seeing it. So I think the same way. Like people say, okay, well, he promised, and it's like I think it's like every president, they promise things and then shit happens. And then it's like, this one has been a fucking rough one. This one has literally fucked us all up, Honestly, I can say, even for the ones that did, well, he screwed us the fuck up. Like, let's see it for what it is, right? But then not everybody will agree to it. So I, like I said, I'm not big on politics, so I don't really, but I will say I see it for what it is. What is right, and what is wrong is wrong. And I've said that, multiple times.
Yeah, well, and ironically, for being such hardworking, independently, like fiscally independent communities that are small business owners, doing all these things, working their fucking asses off. Like it is just, I don't know. It's like, I think at some point they probably just were like, didn't believe, like I said, didn't believe it was going to happen, but were like, cared enough about those things that it was enough of a ruse to get them to make it across,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's incredible. I think there's, in my opinion, I think once the Democrats became like the genocide supporters and pro-war and all that shit, I think it all just kind of threw everything down the tube, in my opinion. But and then I think people were like, we'll just believe anything at this point because it's so hopeless on either side,
I think that that's where I think that that's why I drew like, and just stopped following the news and stopped because it's like, it's a shit show.
Yeah.
Let's call it, it's a shit show. And I think that that's why I was just like, I'm just going to continue to do what I can and support. And I would do what I think is right on my behalf, right? And continue to support these families and these communities as much as I can. And, that's all I can do is, raise raise awareness and do that for everybody.
So as we kind of wrap this up here, number one, I do want to thank you for joining me and having this conversation. I know this is not easy for you to have. As much as I love hanging out with you, I think this is like not a walk in the park, hang out. There's a lot of emotions and hard things that are going on. So I really thank you so much for being vulnerable with everybody and sharing your story, and not only your story, but the stories of all the families and people that you are continuing to help out. So obviously, that's that's incredible. So thank you so much. I'm very grateful for it. Do you have any kind of final thoughts here, just from our conversations, or anything that you want to get out?
I would say that keep doing what you're doing. Keep raising that awareness. I think that it will reach people. It might not reach people right away, but it will reach some. And as long as it reaches some, that makes a difference. So I say keep doing what you're doing. You're doing amazing work. And then people stand up. Stand up for what's right. What is right and what's wrong is wrong. And at this point, I see it as don't give up. There's going to be hard times. And Minnesota stood together. And I would say that we can all do it together. We will continue to support, and I will continue to do what I can to my best that I can. And I will just keep fighting for these families, and will continue to support them as long as I can. And, as long as I can continue to work with Haven and we can continue to support families, I will continue to do that. But I will say, I wish that there was a lot of more Hispanics out there, standing up. So I will call and say, hey, raise your voice, stand up. I know we're afraid, but if we use our fear to make us strong, then we will be strong and we will stand against it. So that's my thing. Please stand up and don't be afraid. We will make it.
So on social media, I know typically you're speak Spanish. Do you want to send a message out in Spanish, and feel free to just say what you need to?
I would tell them, or in Spanish, que no tengan miedo. Estamos con ustedes. La comunidad latina tiene miedo de lo que estamos viviendo con inmigración, pero hay mucho apoyo. Estamos tratando de hacer lo mejor que podamos con organizaciones y no están solos. Mantengan la fe. Los que están allá adentro, mantengan la fe. Y vamos a seguir trabajando para ayudarlos y hacer lo que se pueda para salir adelante de esto. Es lo que tengo para ustedes, y estamos aquí, no están solos. No se les olvide que hay gente maravillosa haciendo lo que pueden para ustedes.
Was that pretty much just what you said a moment ago? Okay.
Pretty much,
Yeah.
just saying, there's amazing people, amazing communities out there willing to support, and don't give up. And for those that are, behind those bars, there is hope. There is hope, and you are not alone. There's a lot of us fighting for you guys. So let's stand up.
Thank you so much. For anybody listening out there, obviously you've gone through great financial stripes and stuff to work through it. I know you actually have a GoFundMe to help kind of just pay for education and some of the things that you've been dealing with. Are there other ways that people could help you or help Haven? And I could add the links in later.
I say even just a share. It doesn't even have to, just anything, honestly. I would, anything. I am always worried about the family. So, just trying to be, so far I can be able to continue to do what I'm doing, anything will help me. Just a little, hey, how are you doing? Will help me. I'm not really, picky. I just say, just stand up and help us out. We need volunteers. We're always constantly needing volunteers with Haven, especially, bilingual volunteers, Spanish, Somalian, any language. We constantly need them. So I would say, that would be a big help. The volunteers, or just trying to figure out how to give a little bit back.
Yeah. And obviously, so there's a network of volunteers. There's people doing, translation help, working in their different, communities, such like that as well. There's people, I'm sure, in the background helping with logistics or donations, things like that. So there's quite a wide array of things. I'm sure there's, you could donate with your money. You could probably donate with your time, or even donate goods and stuff like that. So there's plenty of ways that you could help out.
Yes, I would say there's so many different ways. Even just a ride. Some of these families are afraid. Some of these families don't have, a ride to get to their appointments or to their check-in. Some of these people need help getting to that check-in for ICE. Just, being that little support. Taking a little time from your day will make a big difference.
Yeah. Additionally, I'm going to put in the Stand with New Jersey website as well. They also have links for all their mutual aid for the people that are also doing the work very similar to Haven in New Jersey as well. It's been very important for the Minnesota people to help teach them, as we learn from Chicago and Chicago learned from LA, and all the different incursions that have happened over this time. So it's important that we stand across the country and unite and share resources and knowledge and things like that. But yeah, like I said, thank you so much for coming on here. If you want to support myself in the show as well, it's at DissentDad. I'm also on PayPal and Buy Me a Coffee. If you're interested in watching the show, DissentDad is more my political stuff. The show is Occupation Breakdown, so it's at Occupation Breakdown or at DissentDad. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, YouTube, so all across the board there. So there's all the links will be in the bottom as well. Thank you so much. This has been an incredible experience. I really appreciate you being on.
No, thank you for having me on. And like I said, raise your voice, and we're all together. Nobody's alone. We will figure out. We will make it together. We will figure it out. And for New Jersey, you guys have this. Hang in there. We will make it through. We're there for you guys.
Everybody have a great night. Thank you very much.